All right. Okay. Do you have babysitters? Are there any children?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay. At any rate, the babysitting area is outside. The restrooms are down the hallway. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jane VanFossen, and just a little bit about my background. I grew up in Anaconda, went to the University of Montana here back in the Jurassic Age, and joined the Navy to see the world for a couple of years, and 23 years later I retired. After I retired and was widowed, I came back to the state that I had retained a residency in throughout my entire military career, and that was, of course, Montana, and I came to the best town in Montana, and that was Missoula, and hope to live here for the rest of my life. There are lots of us around Missoula who are natives who have returned. Let me tell you how Save Our Neighborhoods formed, very, very briefly. About last November, a group of about 40 of us sat down to discuss Missoula's growth policies. Those growth policies began about 4 years ago, and what we found after we discussed the topic, that what we had in common was a concern and a series of concerns over how those policies could affect our neighborhood's quality of life. We formed a nonpartisan, nonprofit, 100% volunteer organization called Save Our Neighborhoods. Our intent was to investigate the growth management situation here in Missoula, to educate ourselves. Oddly enough, we wanted to know what we were talking about, and we also wanted to inform the community about what was going on with growth management. The purpose of our meeting tonight is to tell you some of the things that we've learned. We've spent literally, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of hours, hundreds of volunteer hours, researching the ordinances, researching building permits, subdivisions. We've gone through the files in the county courthouse and in the city hall, and we're beginning to get to know what's happening. Tonight's schedule is a pretty simple one. We're going to give you an informational presentation to begin with. The first speaker will be Harold Holm, and then I'll talk about the local law, in a very simple way, I hope. Then we'd like to get some questions from you all about the local law as you understand it, and maybe we can clarify what's going on. And then we would like to have an around the town discussion to hear what your experiences are in your neighborhoods relative to growth management, both the good experiences and the not so good, because it certainly is a mixed picture. The ground rules, of course, are that we are going to be models of civility, and we are going to listen carefully to a variety of points of views, and we're going to try and stay focused on the issues rather than throwing brickbats at persons, at individuals. We want candid opinions but no personal attacks. I'd like to express, first of all, a big thank you to Craig Holdorf from Missoula Community Access Television under a grant. They're filming us tonight, and we will be broadcast on MCAT in the future. Do we know when yet?
Okay. Call for scheduling.
Okay, call for scheduling, please.
Watch the community bulletin board.
Okay, it'll be on the community bulletin board. I'd also like to very much express our appreciation to a lady by the name of Kathy Hubble, whose business is Ad Scripts. She helped us enormously as a bunch of amateurs to deal with the media and put together a press and information packet, and we got wonderful response from the media. I want to give a special credit to a lady by the name of Jan Holm, right there, who was the chairman of our Public Information Committee, also to Eileen Schwaneman and Nancy Foley, members of that committee who helped pull everything together for tonight. Also, I'd like to say a big thank you to the lady who's operating the projector. That's Jane Reichenwald. She's put in a lot of time so that we have this presentation in a reasonable shape. Do we have any elected officials here tonight? I've already seen a couple. Outstanding. Okay. Ed Childers. These are councilmen. Jerry Ballas, Lois Herbig. Who am I missing? Clayton Floyd. Okay, thank you so much for coming tonight. These are council people, some of the and we're getting really good response, I should say, from the city council since we began to bring focused issues and problems to them. To begin tonight, I'd like to kind of play a game with this map up here. Where are you all from, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand? We've got a river that runs through it. I was hoping I could reach this, but clearly I'm not going to be able to. North of the river, south of the interstate is an area known as the north side, west side area. Do we have anybody here from the north side, west side? Okay, still on. About how many is that? About 2. Can I say about 7 people? Or not 8? We're not good. Okay. How many folks do we have here from further down Reserve Street from the Emma Dickinson area, the River Road area? 2, 3, 4,
5.
how many?
5.
What's your count? 5?
No, 6.
6.
There were 6.
Okay. 6 from that part of town. How many out of the Slant Street area? 4?
5.
5? 6? How many from the Lewis and Clark area? All right. You guys vote too. I'm watching the turnouts. Okay. Could you raise your hand so we can get a approximate count? 12? That's what I got.
That's more.
Okay, 14. Okay, how many out of the South Hills area? 4, 6, 6.
6.
Okay. How many out of the Rattlesnake? Help me with this.
18.
Okay. 18. And that's both the lower end. Okay, how many out of the university area? They always turn out in wars. Keep your hands up, please. You're a big group. Anybody got a count there?
42.
Oh, okay. What have I missed? Of course, Franklin to the fort. Good.
South side.
Okay, Franklin to the fort, please. Raise your hands. 16. Okay, how many are here from the county, outside of the city limits? And could you tell me, let me split it in 2 parts. How many are from the general area of Mullen Road? How many are from Target Range? Okay.
Okay. 11.
Put you out there. Okay, did I not say Emma Dickinson? The River Road, Emma Dickinson area? Did we get them? Okay. Have I missed anybody's name?
South side.
Grant Creek.
South. Oh, Grant Creek, of course, Grant Creek.
Wow.
Okay. Okay, Grant Creek is way up there. Is what it is.
8.
Always have a tall treasurer.
No, 8.
And Miller Creek? Good. 4?
4.
4 from Miller Creek. Okay. And McCormick? South side.
7? No, that was 1.
14.
You know what I did? I put Emma Dickinson in the south side area, so I apologize. Don't take that personally. Okay, any other, close enough. Any other neighborhoods?
Why don't you count Emma Dickinson again?
Okay, let's see Emma Dickinson River Road again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Good. Thank you very much.
What about Farview and Pelican?
What about Farview and Pelican? How many people are here from that area? All right.
1, 2, 3.
3 very vocal. Oops, sorry. I kind of put you in the wrong place. Forgive me. I had a much neater map, and of course I left it at home. So what can I say? All right, so that's where we're from. Those are the neighborhoods that are represented. Now I'd like to launch into our presentation, Save Our Neighborhoods presentation. And we will be, thank you, we will be passing around baskets tonight. There's candy in those baskets, so help yourself. And also there are green cards. A green card is how to enroll and how to get on our mailing list and how to get either emails or postcards. And what we have found in dealing with our city government is that when numbers show up, the elected officials listen. So that's one of the things that we do is send out alerts that there is going to be a significant hearing for the neighborhoods. And those are the kinds of reasons why we'd like to have your names, addresses, phone numbers. We don't charge dues. All of the money that has gone into our treasury has come out of the generous contributions of members. We don't have IRS nonprofit qualifications, so this is not deductible contributions. But putting together this meeting tonight, sending out 2,700 postcards, which we did, putting up posters all over town, paying for just a handful of ads in the newspaper, came to $1,500. So that every cent of that came out of the pockets of our members. So they deserve, and there are about 130 members currently.
Nope, more
So
than that.
much credit to us all.
Closer to 150 now.
Closer to 150.
People have been turning in.
All right. Okay, let's get started. Harold, if you would. Harold Holm is a Butte native. His family has been here in Montana for about a century. He has traveled all over the world and lived in neighborhoods all over the world, as far-flung as Athens, Greece. He spent many years as a commercial fisherman off the Pacific Northwest and became very involved with the problems of fisheries and scarcity of fish supplies. He became very active in these ecological activities and was part of a federal panel, right? That actually helped to allocate those resources, those scarce resources. In the more recent past, he's also a returned native. He's come back here and has been active working with Georgetown Lake in the Pintler area to try and allocate a scarce resource there. That's the water that is needed for irrigation, plus the water that is needed for the lake. So Harold has long-standing interest in environmental concerns, and he's going to discuss some aspects of growth management in Missoula. Over to you.
Thank you, Jane. Can everyone hear me all right? As Jane said, I'm a native of Butte, not Missoula. The other day, an old-timer told me that Missoula used to be called the Sin City. I argued that Butte had that distinction, thank you. And then another old-timer said he just returned from one of the legislative sessions, and he assured me that the real Sin City was Helena. The things I remember most about my old hometown were its distinctive neighborhoods. Finntown, Meaderville, Centerville, Walkerville, the east side and the west side. Each had its own character and in some cases its own language. What's special to me about that are the same things that are special for me here, a sense of place. My mother's old neighborhood of Meaderville is now waterfront property, only it's underwater. I think they call it Lake Berkeley.
Lake Berkeley.
Things can change for the better or they can change for the worse. Why do we think there's a growth crisis in Missoula? Over the last 4 years, the effects of the city's new growth management Phase 1 policies and the potential impacts of the yet-to-be-passed Growth Management Phase 2 have created a lot of uncertainty and confusion among citizens. Surprises popped up in some areas in the form of buildings and groups of buildings that don't seem to fit the neighborhood. And we are concerned that there is a lack of public awareness of what is going on, causing distrust of the planning department and the administration's intentions. Some developers, realtors, citizens, and even council members have expressed reservation about various ordinances and aren't sure about the meaning of sections adopted in GM Phase 1, even as the city moves ahead to pass Phase 2.
Your microphone.
Is it working now? Technology is wonderful. You going now? Yeah. Is it?
No. Use this.
Grab the old one. Fix it.
How about that? Okay, good. If I can find my place again here. I just assumed that this group knows more than I do of the colorful history of Missoula. I'm not one of those who believes that history is best left in the past. It's interesting to me that at roughly the same time Lewis and Clark were camped at Traveler's Rest, Beethoven was composing his violin concerto, so well performed recently by the Missoula Symphony Orchestra. Missoula has always been something of a regional trading center. The city really boomed after the coming of the railroad in 1883. Neighborhood streets were laid out, and some great neighborhoods grew with their own eclectic architectural styles. This was the golden age of urban planning in America. In many neighborhoods, lots were about 30 feet wide and 130 feet deep, and most homes were built on multiple lots, parcel size depending on the circumstances and the desires of the owners. You'll see the importance of this in Jane's talk. Missoula's diverse economy and the role as gateway to Glacier Park in western Montana allowed for steady to moderate growth in Missoula. Growth slowed in the 1980s, a 4% increase in 10 years, and moved into fast forward in the 90s, an 18% increase in 10 years. Growth continues at a fast pace, as you have probably noticed. Bear in mind that a seemingly moderate growth rate of 1% per year will lead to doubling in 70 years. This map shows projected growth by the year 2025. Information provided to a transportation consulting firm hired by the city. This map shows an additional 1,640 dwelling units in the area roughly from Mount Sentinel to Reserve and from the river south. And in another 3,400 dwelling units in the Mullen Road area. The numbers have recently been revised, some upward and some downward, as you can see in the handout we provided, showing that what we understand to be reflections of the effects of infill policies. Now, why are people coming to Montana and Missoula, and what's in store for the future? We know that an increasing number of people are coming here. You could cite America's growth and immigration in general as causes, but that doesn't quite explain it. Our eastern plains counties are losing population, a phenomenon one North Dakotan called 4 funerals and a wedding. Viewed as roughly a third of what it once was. Americans have a right called the freedom to travel that comes out of the 14th Amendment. And boy, do we go for it, especially the young and the old. Say that life gets a little dull and wet in Seattle and you watch a river runs through it. The Montana mystique kicks in and you grab your fly rod and it's off for Missoula or the Bitterroot. The USA Today poll claims that 50% of baby boomers want to retire in the Rocky Mountain West. People come here mainly from Washington, Oregon, and California. Ironically, when people leave Montana for whatever reasons, they head to Washington, Oregon, and California. Shifting populations. People coming here tend to be older, wealthier, and we're told more conservative than those leaving. Some people attend the university and want to stay on. It's clear that the university and the city of Missoula complement each other and depend on each other in many ways. They also have impacts on each other. The information for this graph was provided to us by the university. It shows the increase in student enrollment on the top line and on-campus housing capacity on the bottom line. While some new housing has been created, some former dormitories have also been converted to office space, leading to a virtual capacity flatline. It is expected that in the near future, 184 new dwellings units will be provided in the Dorm Blazer area. But the university has a goal of adding 2,000 more students by 2005. Since 1985, student enrollment has increased by roughly 4,000 to 13,000, a 45% increase. Now, university students are living all over Missoula. As near as we can determine, and this is from a master's thesis, students comprise 25 to 28% of Missoula's renters, which means there's a lot of other renters out there. They compete for rentals in low-income housing, and rental vacancy is at the current low level of 1%. Scarcity sets up a vicious supply and demand cycle. The cost of rent goes up, investors buy or build homes for rental purposes, and prospective homeowners have a hard time finding a home they can buy when they're competing with renters. Roughly 50% of Missoula homes are owner-occupied as compared to 70% for Montana. Some of our neighborhoods, we're told, are down in the 30% owner-occupied range. Now, Missoula is a desirable town facing growth pressures. It is difficult to remain an island of affordable housing in a sea of demand. How does the city plan to deal with growth? I'd like to pause here and show a clip from Mayor Cadis' speech to the Chamber of Commerce this February.
With respect to growth, the green area is city limits in 1960. We covered about 8 square miles and we were 27,000 people. Today, the brown outline line is what our city limits are today. If you subtract out the open space, we're about 20 square miles now and about 57,000 square people. 57,000 square. I'm glad you laughed at it, you know. It says something about us, doesn't it? The point here, if we keep growing the way we've been growing, what's going to happen in 2040 is that we will be about 50 square miles. And if we're 50 square miles, we are going to go the city of Missoula, the urban area, maybe it won't be the city, but we will go well beyond Lolo. We will go all the way to Bonner, and we'll go well beyond the Frenchtown Mill. That just isn't going to work very well. We have to grow smarter than that, and that means we're going to have to be denser in terms of the number of people per square mile, not in terms of mental activities, of course. One of the great things about our city is that it has some very distinct boundaries. We have Mount Sentinel and Mount Jumbo, we have the South Hills, we have the North Hills. And boundaries make great cities. You see it with rivers and mountains and oceans. They're really important. But it also means that we only really have one direction to grow, and that's to the west. And we really need to take care of how we grow. I used 40 years as an increment here because I'm 46. I was 6 years old in 1960. And no, I was 4 years old in 1960. Something's wrong there. I was really an advanced kid, you know. But I don't think that if we grow to 50 square miles, you know, with a population of 100 to 120,000, that that's going to be sustainable. It just won't work. We will spread ourselves out, and we'll destroy much of what it is that we like about Montana, that we like about our home today, which has to do with some open spaces, among other things. Let's go to new construction. This is just the city of Missoula. But you can see we've had pretty steady new construction at, you know, really 300 units or better, and we had one big spike in the early 90s, and we're heading into another one. The last column is estimated for this year, but based on where we are today compared to last year, we're going to have a lot of new construction. Next one, please. No, the other way. There you go. Median sales price. In 1990, the average median sales price was $65,000. Today, it's $150,000. That's huge. Now, there are two things that are going on there. One is, for up to about $100,000, you couldn't build new houses for less than that. But now we're past that point, and it's really a function of demand outstripping supply. We can't build houses fast enough. And if we're not careful, we will end up like a lot of other places in the West, and I think of a lot of resort communities like Sun Valley and Jackson, where median sales price is $1 million, or even Boulder, where median sales price is around $300,000. And I think if we do that, we have lost something really valuable in our community. One of the things that makes Missoula so great is everybody can live here. There's a wide mix of incomes. And if we become a community of wealthy elites, and all of the people who take care of us have to drive in from 20 miles, then we will be a very different place, and I don't think we will be nearly as nice a place as we are today. We have some choices. I think that there are three basic ways of dealing with the problems of growth. One, we can solve the growth problem by just getting ugly. If we just let it go and become a bunch of trailer courts and lots of traffic congestion, people will just decide not to come here. We can stay nice by limiting growth. And we'll end up with the scenario I just described. We'll start looking like a resort community in any number of ways. The one I dislike the most is with the just high-income people. Or we can plan and try to build neighborhoods and add density. We have to figure out how to add density. Our best neighborhoods are built at 4 to 6 dwelling units per acre. Most of the development we've done in the last 20 years has been at 2 dwelling units per acre. We need to reverse that trend. We have to get back to 4 to 6 dwelling units per acre. That is not high density. That in most places, most large metropolitan areas, that's low to medium density. We call it medium to high density, but we need to find ways to get back to that. And a lot of that has to do with creating good examples and giving comfort to our neighborhoods so that they can see that that's okay, that's a livable space. If we don't, we are going to sprawl to 50 square miles in the next 40 years. Our environment. We have a number of...
Thank you. You can see it's difficult to talk about growth issues in a few minutes. What is the object here? Is it to cram more and more people into the city with no end in sight? Is it a realistic hope that this will somehow stop sprawl? Remember the phone booth craze? I did this when I was in college, but I don't recommend it for anyone age 20. is the object to make this a better place where citizens feel that the neighborhood character is valued and protected. In fairness, the infilling of vacant lots, abandoned properties, and former industrial or commercial sites seems to make sense. The theory here is to increase efficiency, making use of already existing roads, sewers, schools, and other infrastructure. But this needs to be viewed in the complete context of all the possible impacts, such as traffic congestion, health and safety and welfare of the people, overcrowding, parking, and the capacity of existing infrastructure. What might work in one neighborhood could seem undesirable in another. People have certain expectations about the character of the neighborhood they're buying into. Some line should be drawn, protecting what's best in older established areas where the neighborhood could be altered to the point where character, livability, and diversity could actually be diminished. It looks as though just about every city in the nation, from Atlanta to Denver to Portland, is struggling with growth issues in one way or another. Ed McMahon of the Conservation Fund spoke recently at the Helena Smart Growth Conference. He is especially concerned with preserving community character in historic areas. His book lays out a visioning process with community involvement for determining how people want their city to grow and what's worth preserving. This includes identifying a community's assets. The value of this book lies in the broad look at case histories of successful communities and the range of options available. This is a photo of an A.J. Gibson designed house. Gibson was a premier early Missoula architect who designed many residences as well as our courthouse. I spoke with Ed McMahon on the phone last week and discussed Missoula's situation. He said it was crucial that we get a local historical overlay for our neighborhoods. Several of our citizens, some of whom are in this room, are working on this right now. McMahon has written that for density to be accepted, compensating amenities must be provided. This relates to the concept of public benefit. We need a real community-wide discussion of what we mean by infill and what kind of infill is desirable in Missoula. McMahon has also written that progress does not demand degrading the surroundings. It can occur without destroying the things about a community that people love. Now, Jane VanFossen is going to reveal the mystery of the ordinances.
Are you able to hear me?
No.
Thank you, Harold. You should have in your hands a handout, and included in that handout are some information sheets on a number of ordinances. They're brief sheets. That's so you have something to take home in case everything I explained this evening doesn't stick. What I'd like to talk to you about tonight are 5 policies. There are, of course, many other policies having to do with zoning that are on the books. And let me tell you what the books are. The books are Missoula's subdivision regulations. You can go down to City Hall, to the Office of Planning and Grants, and spend some money and buy subdivision regs. I'm not recommending you do that, but it's good reading if you want to fall asleep. But these are the laws that govern subdivision in our city. Another set of laws are Title 19 of Municipal Code. And this is what that looks like. This is the blue book, the Missoula City Zoning Ordinance. And a number of changes were made to this ordinance 4 years ago, in March of 1999. I'm going to be talking about the density puzzle and 5 policies that are either currently impacting the density policies here in Missoula or that have the potential to impact density in the future. These are all consistent with what the mayor described in his speech in terms of his densification agenda. These policies impact basically land and residential structures on lands. I'm limiting my discussion to residential structures. The first piece of the puzzle has the ugly title of non-conforming lots. What's a non-conforming lot? Well, if you were to go home and look at the legal description of your home, you would find that the legal description is expressed in terms of the square mile that your property sits in. That's part of this, that's the section number and the township. You would also probably find mention of a subdivision, a block number, and 1 or more lot numbers. Back 100 years ago or so, Missoula was streets were laid out in a grid, blocks were divided into lots. Those lots typically were either 30 feet wide or 25 feet wide on the street. They went as deep as 125 feet or 130 feet to the alley. For example, in the university area, I'm going to use that as an example, current zoning calls for a lot size of 5,400 square feet. And zoning was enacted 30, 40 years after the original lots were laid out. Let me show you an example here of a block. This is really faded out, and I apologize for that. What I'm trying to get across here is the fact that there are 11 lots on each side of the alley, and if you look really close, you can see a 30-foot wide lot that's 130 feet deep. Okay, and there are 11 of those lots on this side of the block. And this is Connell, Helen, Daly, and Hilda over in the university area. What has happened, though, in terms of ownership parcels is that folks bought, in this case, 2 lots. That owner owns 2 lots, 2 lots, 2 lots, 2 lots, 1.5 lots, 1.5 lots, 3 lots, 2, 2, 2, and 2. So that's the kind of pattern of development that has occurred throughout Missoula. Now, what's important about this is that in the mid-90s, our city attorney issued an opinion that every lot in Missoula is a potential building site. This is a profound change in zoning. And in March of 2000, this policy was included in the zoning ordinance. We've done some legal research. We're amateurs, we're not lawyers. And we find that the issue of non-conforming lots is very common across America in many states and in many municipalities. There are, if you go on the internet and do a search on the term non-conforming lots, you'll find many, many city ordinances and many state laws. We had a hard time finding any other community that's doing it like Missoula is doing it. In the main, what happens here is that if, in fact, an owner has, for instance, 2 bare lots, they can both be built on. And there is no protest by the neighbors because this is an administrative process. All the owner has to do is apply for a building permit. This is how the houses are built out on that particular lot. And as you can see, in the majority of cases, the house actually straddles the internal property line. But if the house was scraped, and in an unlikely event that I just want to explain how the process works to you, then there could be, theoretically, a house on every lot in this block. Okay, that's how puzzle piece number 1, called non-conforming lots, plays out. Puzzle piece number 2, I'm calling boundary relocations. Now, under Montana state law, every owner who owns multiple lots has a right to either aggregate those lots or to change the internal boundary lines. We're going to look at an example in another part of town. This is the Franklin School area, and this is, again, a washed out photo, but It's the Franklin School area from an aerial photo from 1998. Now in the Franklin area, the lots are a little bit narrower than the last example I showed you. They're 25 feet wide. What we're trying to depict here is a ownership parcel that existed for several decades, 100 feet wide by 130 feet deep. There was a single family home that sat right here on 12th Street. And as you can see, there were 4 lots, 1 unit. Now, because of policy number 2, which is boundary relocations, a couple of years ago, probably 3 years ago, the situation was changed. The owner decided to change 4 lots into 3 lots, and he created this small one in the back. He created a lot which the existing house sat on, and then he merged 2 lots to create a long, narrow lot. Incidentally, I might point out that this lot is smaller than any of the original 4. Okay, let's take a look at what then happened. There was a triplex built here, and then there was a small house, or a house built which is accessible only from the alley. All of these houses, incidentally, today are now rentals. There is no owner occupancy on what was this original parcel. So we have 5 units on 3 lots, an increase from the original density of 1 house to 5 households. And this is not an unusual example. It just illustrates a lot of the principles. We could have given any of a couple dozen different examples where similar boundary relocations have taken place. I'd like to move on to the 3rd policy now, and these are PNCs. What's a PNC? Planned Neighborhood Cluster. This is a change in the zoning ordinance, again, that was enacted in March of 1999. Just a reminder about what zoning is about. Typically, zoning establishes land use and standards for that use. But I'm limiting my conversation this evening to residential land uses. There are, of course, commercial and industrial and open space uses. There are a variety of other uses, but we're talking residential tonight. Typically, a zoning requirement would look like this. A minimum lot size would be defined, for instance, 5,400 square feet. A front yard setback from the property line to the building envelope would be defined. A backyard limit setback would be defined, and then there would be a separation between buildings standard established. So those are typical zoning requirements. Now, what happens with a planned neighborhood cluster? Well, those requirements are waived. And you can adjust the minimum lot size if you're a developer. You can adjust front and backyard depth, and you can adjust the distance between houses, in some cases very significantly. Why were PNCs permitted? Well, when you look at the zoning ordinance, you find language like, the purpose of a PNC is to, quote, encourage social integration, unquote. And how this is accomplished is by the construction of a front porch, I guess, so people can say howdy to their neighbors, and clustered mailboxes, so people can encounter their neighbors while they're picking up their mail. And it's also accomplished by reduced distance between houses. And that's why you get to know your neighbor a lot better, I guess. At any rate, 40 PNCs approximately have been approved to date, and they haven't been approved in an even distribution pattern across the city. Probably the area that has seen the largest number is the square mile that surrounds Franklin School. There have been a batch of PNCs also combined with subdivision that have been found in the Emma Dickinson area. North side, west side has also seen a significant number of PNCs, and then there have been numbers scattered around the rest of town. The thing that you should remember about a PNC is this is, again, an administrative approval process. The planning officer reviews, the planning officer approves. Neighbors are supposed to be notified. There is supposed to be a meeting held. You're supposed to be told what the developer's intent is, but there is no right of protest. Okay, once again, looking at this example again, just Just to stick with the same example, this is after a planned neighborhood cluster was approved. And the thing that I would like you to take home, the take-home lesson, and there won't be a quiz later, but is that non-conforming lots in combination with boundary relocation, in combination with planned neighborhood clusters, give you this kind of multiplier effect, which you started with one house and end up with 5 houses, or 5 households. Actually, there are 3 structures, but 5 households. And this multiplier effect can be used and is being used in established, developed neighborhoods. So, in our opinion, there are winners and there are losers with the PNC. The winners are the developers. This is a great way for them to maximize their investment in land and in buildings. The city gains because there's an increased tax base. My gosh, you get a lot more taxes from 5 households than you do from 3 structures than you do from 1. Who loses? Well, we think the neighbors are the losers in terms of loss of stability and predictability. And essentially that's the message that Sun is trying to deliver, is that instead of having a zoning ordinance that creates winners and losers, we'd really like to create a win-win situation. Let me go on to 4th ordinance, the 4th piece of the puzzle, and this is density bonus.
Neighborhoods are going.
The neighborhoods are...
That's a bad omen.
It's a poltergeist among us. Okay, density bonuses. Density bonus has been used. This was also enacted 4 years ago. It's been used simultaneously with subdivisions. And a subdivision, by definition, is the creation of new lots. This is not a change in existing lots, but it's the creation of new lots, frequently on bare land, but not always. Okay, density bonus gives the developer some benefits. For example, a developer gets a waiver from minimum lot size. That is, if it's in conjunction. Actually, this is a little bit fuzzy. This is a subject of discussion currently among the city council, is this whole issue of minimum lot size and its enforceability. Anyway, let me go on. The density bonus allows construction of up to 50% more housing units than the underlying zoning would permit, and of course a density bonus enables the developer to increase his return on investment, or her return on investment. The point that we'd like to make is that, in our opinion, density bonuses are being given too easily to developers. We would like to see more community benefit derived from density bonuses if the policy is kept. For instance, a developer gets a bonus of 20% if he simply hooks up to sewer. Well, within the city limits, nobody's going to be permitted to have a subdivision or to build new homes unless they're hooked up to sewer. So this is a gimme. The second one is there's a 20% bonus if separate legal descriptions are provided for each of the lots in the subdivision. That implies that the property will be sold rather than rented. However, it could be sold to a landlord, isn't necessarily sold to an owner-occupant. And then there is a 20% bonus, for instance, if the ground floor of the house is less than 900 square feet. These are the kinds of things that a developer does in order to get a density bonus. And those of you who've had density bonuses in your neighborhood, especially in the Dickinson River Road, you have seen these kinds of incentives play out. Let me just show you quickly a terrible map of the Emma Dickinson area. The streets are all washed out, but this is a square mile that is surrounded by the river at the north, Russell Street, 3rd Street, and Reserve Street. And this, again, is just hand-drawn, but wherever you see a little block, that means there's either been a subdivision or one of these boundary relocations, subdivision exemptions, and there are a whole bunch of little X's, if you could see it, and those are all the new households that have gone into Emma Dickinson. Now, nobody officially, I don't think, has come up with a number of how many new building permits have been issued in the last 4 years in Emma Dickinson. My unofficial research, by scanning several thousands of building permits, is that there have been 430 new homes go into that square mile in the last 4 years.
Yeah, and that is that there's only 3 cross streets in that roughly 100 block square.
That's right. The infrastructure is seriously insufficient in this area for density. I've driven there in the last several weeks many times, but the last couple days, 3rd Street becomes just a nightmare. Curtis and Davis are real tough. You can't make a left turn in this area, or if you do, you're going to have to be very patient to make a left turn. At any rate, there has been added density in this area without what we call added amenities, and that of course means parks and additional road infrastructure. The city is attempting, in all fairness, to address this problem by developing an after-the-fact infrastructure plan, and that just went before the planning board last week. It started to be discussed. Wanted to talk to you about one specific example of a new subdivision, and this is a density bonus subdivision with planned neighborhood cluster. So what we're seeing here is that in the area that is yellow up here, 51 homes are in the process of being built in the village of Bentley Park. This is a real conspicuous one, which is why I'm using it as an example. Most of us either drive north or south on Reserve Street, reluctantly, but we do it, and because it's a crowded street. At any rate, as you look to the east, you will see Bentley Park being built, the village of Bentley Park being built. But this is just to give you a comparison of the density. The houses to the immediate south, there's a subdivision. There are 18 houses built in that subdivision. There will be 51 built in the village of Bentley Park, and that one is well underway. Okay, one of the points that I wanted to make about the village, let's take a look at the site plan. Here's how it's laid out. And again, many of these units are under construction. Phase 3 of Bentley Park was just approved a few weeks ago. That's this section right here. At any rate, there are 51 units, a mixture of townhouses, duplexes, single family. It's on 8.5 acres, and there's a park. There is a small subdivision park there. So that's one of the real good things about this particular division. Again, we're seeing the multiplier effect that I alluded to earlier, density bonus plus PNC. But one of the good things about this is that this is a subdivision, therefore our elected officials get to take a hard look at these kinds of things, and they get to discuss and vote on these subdivisions. And the neighbors can also testify and can protest. Let me move on to the 5th policy, which is not yet in effect. It has been proposed, and this is the policy having to do with permitting ADUs. What's an ADU? An accessory dwelling unit. What this means is it's the little house in the backyard. Let's take a look at the sample, or in the front yard, or in the side yard, or in the basement, or in the attic, or over the garage. Those are ADUs. A second house on the property. This is just a hypothetical example. 2 ownership parcels, 2 houses, and Mr. and Mrs. Right side have built an ADU in their backyard. The thing that you should take note of is it would be legal if the provisions have been proposed or enacted for them to place this new building, which is quite a small building for residential purposes, 3 feet from the boundary line. So these folks probably will be impacted by that construction. Again, this would be an administrative permit. There would be no protest. The size of these households must range from 220 to 800 square feet, and there is a requirement that the owner occupy either the main house or the accessory dwelling unit. However, there are no provisions for enforcement and no identification of any budget for enforcement officers. And the ADU, as currently proposed, would be permitted in all parts of the city. This is Grant Creek, South Hills, folks who aren't impacted by the older established neighborhood pattern of non-conforming lots. Okay, let me just wrap up here by talking about the worst case scenario in that block that we have been looking at over in the university area. Theoretically, this is the kind of construction that could come about. This is a worst case scenario. We probably never see this, but it's a potential, okay? And that wraps up what I have to say about the density puzzle and the 5 policies. What I'd like to do right now is to open it up for questions in case my explanation has been unclear to any of you, because these are the policies that are going to affect your neighborhoods and are affecting your neighborhoods today. Are there any questions on any of these policies? Sir.
Gee, John Wilkins from the Lewis and Clark Neighborhood Committee. In our neighborhood, they're trying to do one of these things. I call it if you look at cluster in the dictionary, it says bunch. And that's what they're doing, trying to put a bunch of houses on a block that has a couple of rentals on it, but is majorly single-family housing. As our mayor said at our meeting last Tuesday, that the trend in Missoula is 65-year-old widows who don't want gardens. And they'd love to have places like this without yards, without gardens. I want to know, my question is how do we shut this down, and how do we shut what's already in the works, stop it from happening?
Recall the politician.
That's not immediate. I want to know an immediate way to do that.
You want me to tell you how to immediately? Nice question, John. Number 1, get informed, get educated so that you can be conversant and you know what you're talking about when you stand up and testify, or when you talk to your neighbors, or when you go to a neighborhood meeting where one of these projects is proposed. And try and keep an open mind, okay? Some of these are not all that bad. Some are simply the kind of change that is inevitable in this community. But sometimes it's really going to change neighborhood character. So the number one recommendation I would say is exactly what you've done tonight, is get yourself informed. Secondly, this is an election year. Ask those candidates where they stand on these policies. Our organization, as I said at the outset, is nonpartisan, but we do intend to ask the candidates where they stand on the policies and issues that concern us. The other thing that I wanted you all to be aware of is the fact that the City Council Plat Annexation and Zoning Committee has just formed 2 weeks ago a subcommittee called the Zoning Issues Subcommittee. It meets every Tuesday, 1 to 3, and it's in City Hall. And for those of you who can afford to break away from your daytime obligations to attend, by all means come. I think what the outcome of that will be is a series of recommendations that will go back to the City Council that will address these very policies. And believe me, we're spending a good deal of time just getting educated on these because they are highly complex. Yes?
Just another suggestion would be to go to City Council meetings on Monday night, because you can speak up in the public comment period time if you can't make meetings during the week because you're working to try to pay your property taxes.
Right. In the handouts you initially picked up outside, you will see the names and phone numbers and how to contact your elected relatives. We have a good group of people who will answer your phone calls and who will respond to you, but they need to hear what your opinions are. Just a minute, John. Yes, sir.
Along with what Ken said, there's one of the biggest problems for most people in this community is getting away at a decent hour, be able to address these issues. In the city, we have fought this thing for years and years in the Dickinson area. And for the most part, they hold their meetings when most people cannot attend. And it doesn't make any difference what you try to say to those people, they do not listen.
Okay, that is a problem for working folks during the daytime. Let me say that some of us are retired and we show up. And if we can speak for you, if you want to pass your message on to us, that's one of the reasons why we formed an organization, is so you can go to your job, but you can know that equally concerned citizens are sitting down in City Hall representing your interests and watching the City Council. Sir? Yes.
Jane, it seems to me like the linchpin, this little puzzle, this tangled little web that we've woven here, is the issue of non-conforming lots, Mr. Nugent's liberal opinion of how that's to be distributed. And I guess my question is how do we as a group go about questioning that opinion in a legal manner? His word is law until somebody questions it, either as a group, if we can't get it before a judge or somebody. What's our process here?
Okay, the question was, did everybody hear it? The linchpin of all these policies is the city attorney's opinion on non-conforming lots being all buildable building sites. One person on our research committee who's done an awful lot of internet research is Nancy Boley, and she's just asked if she can answer your question.
You know, I'm not sure what you can do, but Jana said as far as generally what we can do is be in touch with our city officials. I've done a lot of research on this. I know that the state of California actually by state law requires local communities to write ordinances that require adjoining lots in common ownership. Like if you own a property and you have two lots and they don't both meet the minimum lot size under current zoning, California state law requires that those lots be merged. I also believe that the state of Maine, the state of Illinois, and the state of Pennsylvania have similar laws, so they're obviously not concerned that the Supreme Court will prevent this kind of merger. Previously, the city of Missoula required merging of lots, and following some words from Nugent, our city attorney, the city council voted against that. I think that, frankly, I personally think there's some misleading going on here, and I'm not sure what we can do, but I think we need to be in touch with our city council people. If you have email, that's pretty easy to do, and put some pressure. Also, the cities of Billings, Helena, and Bozeman also require the merger of lots, which our city attorney says would potentially cause legal difficulty. I don't believe that's correct.
Thanks. Okay, the answer is we think it's an open question, and we think it's a debatable question, and at least one councilman, who I'm not going to put on the spot tonight, has said that he's very interested in getting a second opinion, which I think doctors do it, why shouldn't lawyers do it? Sir.
Regarding that issue, what seems to be happening is that it seems to be that OPG or the zoning board is making all these private rulings that is taking the public comment out of the process. And now they approve things and they say what can be done in the neighborhoods when the old underlying zoning laws say that there have to be variances, there has to be public opinion. I would suggest that the group, and I've just been thinking about this recently, that we go to the state attorney general and get an opinion on this. Because I don't think that what the OPG is doing by doing these private letter rulings is legal, because they're doing it without public comment, without public opinion. They're just making a decision saying, oh, we can decide this now and we can change the rules. And I disagree with the ADUs that it's not happening now. They're allowing it to happen. And it's not part of our current zoning. So they just follow the rules that they want to follow. And that we need to go, I think, beyond our level of administration and take it beyond that to get some enforcement and or additional opinions.
I can't tell you how powerful I think an informed citizenry is. I couldn't agree with you more in terms of that Attorney General opinion, and that may be the direction that we move toward. I think first we'll rely on the City Council to represent our interests, and if we find that that works, we're in good shape. If we find that further action needs to be taken, then we're in good shape. But again, I would really urge you to join us. You know, become a part of our group. Yes, over there. Are we still talking about these issues, or would you like to do a wrap up and then we can? Okay, let's do one more question. Then Harold's going to do a wrap up, and then we'll go back to the general discussion. Okay, so you'll have a chance to talk. Yeah, who was over here? Was it Ron or Bo?
My name is Ron Roy Jones. Setting aside the possibility that this density has some other purpose other than creating more rental units.
Can you speak up?
I said, assuming,
Trying to get to the question. Making the assumption that maybe that's not the way to put it. It would appear that this is about creating more rental units. I mean, obviously the university doesn't want to, is reluctant to supplying enough housing for its students, which I can't blame it. But that's being forced out on the rest of us. But assuming that this has not to do with creating more density so there can be more rentals and thus more student housing, who do they expect is going to move into these places? I mean, our average age of the first-time house buyer, home buyer, is 33 because they're getting married and having kids. And if you're getting married and having kids, you want to move into a neighborhood with little grass and some places where there are other people with kids. And second-time home buyers, which is my bracket, it took me 45 years to be able to afford a house with a yard. I don't want to see somebody put a house next to me like that. So I don't want to live in these places. And I know my parents, I just moved them here last year, finding them a place that had a yard and neighbors and so forth. So retirees, you don't want to live there. So what's the point? I don't understand the point of the density housing if it's not strictly for creating more rentals.
We are being assured by a certain group of folks that one of the big benefits that the community gets from this is increased opportunities for home ownership. When we actually do the counts, we find that an awful lot of these houses are being snapped up, especially the ones that are at the lower end and are more affordable, are being snapped up by investment buyers who then turn them into rentals. Right, you did say one. Okay, let's, one thing I passed around a map, and I really want you to understand the context within which this map was passed around, because in my past life as a long-range planner, my experience was that it's really, really difficult to know what 2025 is going to look like. And I really give credit to the Office of Planning and Grants, Transportation Planning Office, for putting some numbers on a piece of paper that indicate what some of the counts of houses might be in the future given our infill policies. I think it was a gutsy thing for them to do. It's essential for good transportation management planning. It's essential for good neighborhood planning. Don't take these numbers as gospel. They're the first attempt to put some numbers on paper, but they're serious. I mean, these are big increases. In fact, we're looking at an increase of, 11,500 houses within our valley. That's the projected number. Whether or not it's 8,000 or whether it's 15,000 in reality, we don't know yet. But please take this with a grain of salt. But this is the kind of hard-headed numbers that we want to see more of. We want to see the impacts assessed. Thanks very much.
And are these numbers new units or total units?
They are new units.
Just new?
Just new units. And yeah, this is hypothetical. But take note that the numbers have been changed. This map was originally published in December as part of the work that's ongoing with the transportation plan. And they were just revised in April. And you can see that the thinking that is going on says more inner area density is what we're after. And we just think that should be a subject of conversation among the community. It shouldn't be something that is decided within 435 Ryman. And now let me turn to, yes.
I just have one question. In all of the discussions and the times that Davis has talked on TV and to the news media, has anybody ever heard him say that with the tax base increase, that present property owners will see a decrease in their taxes?
Just a rhetorical question. I'm going to hand the mic back over to Harold, and he's going to wrap up the PowerPoint presentation. We can turn the lights on again.
Thanks, Jane. Will the policies Jane has described really reduce sprawl? Or will the increased crowding and speculation force existing residents to flee to the country creating more sprawl. Some sense of space, especially in a place like Montana, is important, even if it's our backyards and our urban environment. If towns, not just suburbs, were built on our outskirts, you wouldn't call it sprawl, would you? What happens to our county to the west and our Valley County to the south is vitally important. We should be working together regionally. Have we made sure that all the options have been considered? Here's what we'd like to see happen. We'd like to see an impacts assessment of GM1 ordinances. A process complete with meaningful citizen input that results in realistic and objective impact assessments. The extent to which ordinances can be applied, meaning everywhere they can be used, should be assessed. If ordinances are changed or new ones written, they should be as clearly written as possible so that council members, developers, realtors, and above all the public can understand them. Impact assessment must include exploration of physical limitations such as air quality and infrastructure needs like roads and sewers. It's no secret that Missoula's air quality, though much improved in recent years, is near the bottom of the heap in the state. Transportation planning should go hand in hand with growth planning. Wouldn't it also seem reasonable to do a fiscal impact study and let the citizens know what new development is really going to cost and who's going to pay for it? Let's bring out into the open the numbers behind development costs so we know what developers are incurring and what citizens might be facing in terms of taxes. What are the sociological implications of a higher renter to owner-occupied ratio? For example, the Missoula Housing Corporation has indicated that there's a correlation between the crime rate increases and a declining percentage of owner-occupied property in some of Montana's larger cities. We're looking into this further. These are the people we've elected to make the decisions that can affect our quality of life. We should expect the City Council to be looking out for our neighborhood interests. The Mayor and City Council should take community input seriously because that's part of their charge.
They don't.
We think ideally it would be in everybody's best interest to temporarily limit new building permits to conventional zoning until questions about GM1 are answered. The city needs to work from a vision and have a clear understanding of the fiscal, environmental, and sociological consequences of their decisions so that the form Missoula's growth takes is a result of deliberate judgment. Ultimately, a city's success boils down to the good judgment of its officials and the participation of the public. If we want high standards for our officials, what about ourselves as citizens of Missoula? We have a job to do. It's human nature to let George do it. Fortunately, Missoula has a long history of citizen participation. It's most important that segments of the citizenry not be left out of major decisions that affect them. As things stand now, some people are becoming aware of the effects of growth policies only when changes happen right next door or on their block. As Congressman Tip O'Neill famously said, all politics is local. Last week's meeting at Lewis and Clark School concerning one planned neighborhood cluster in their area brought out a sizable crowd. The eloquence and the common sense of ordinary people never fails to move me. In part, the people's frustration seemed to stem from uncertainty about what they could expect in the way of protection for their neighborhoods. It seemed to me that they felt something was planned on them rather than planned with them. We detect that now we have one of those windows of opportunity when we can really make a difference. We believe that the presence of members of our organization and others at a recent planning and zoning meetings is having an effect. As Jane mentioned, a subcommittee has been formed to discuss possible changes to some of the specific zoning issues we've talked about tonight. We're really grateful to the city council members for setting this up, and we're guardedly optimistic about the outcome. What's really going to make the difference is the input city council members get from the citizens. How are our local officials going to know what we want if we don't tell them? We hope we've raised a sense of urgency about these issues tonight. In conclusion, I would just add that one of the great things about the human race is its ability to look backwards as well as forwards. We can, as Wallace Stegner said, choose to go to great efforts to save what we might otherwise destroy. That applies to our neighborhoods as well as our countryside and our wilderness. Thank you.
What we'd kind of like to do now is do a round-town conversation. And if you represent a neighborhood that you'd like to talk about what you see happening in terms of changes in your neighborhood, we'd like to hear from you. Yes, Mr. Snodgrass.
Will Snodgrass, I think this is a wonderful turnout. I want to thank Jane and the folks from Sun. We, like Jane, have been looking at these issues for quite a while, in particular the sewer issue, since 1994 when we began to actually investigate what was going on. And back in 1994, Joseph Halverson, a federal whistleblower, stood on Mount Sentinel, and we had a video camera, and he said, what you see before you is a developing massive public works scam that is being perpetrated upon the taxpayers of Missoula, who will eventually and quite possibly be forced to pay for their own exit from the community. In other words, they'll be taxed out of the community. As I was listening to the various comments tonight, I thought back to the Vision 2020 meeting that Mayor Kemmis held, and a conversation I had with a realtor, a well-dressed woman from Missoula who was very candid, who said, our national database shows that this is one of the hottest real estate potentials in the United States. And of course, we're now seeing the results of that in terms of packing everyone together. The real bottom line, as Hal has pointed out, is air quality, because we breathe 20 to 30 pounds of air per day while eating 2 to 4 pounds of food and liquid. And there's another bottom line that's begun to surface, literally, and that's the sewer issue. So as these sewer projects are being offered to the citizenry, we all, I think, need to remain aware that there is a tremendous amount of money being made in running these sewer extensions out into the Rattlesnake, into Mullen Road, probably into Target Range, where the existing taxpayers are forced to pay for these heavy costs of sewer, the benefits of which are questionable, but which will accrue to the developers who will be able to connect up to them. And I want everyone here tonight to know that there are viable alternatives to conventional dig deep, bury the sewer mains in the ground and dump the stuff in the river gravity main systems. They are competitively cost. They're being used all around the United States and Canada in cold climates. You can recover your water with them. And these alternative systems are being systematically denied permits at the Department of Environmental Quality. So what's happening here, if you want to look at it in terms of the human anatomy, is that...
Will, if you could wrap it up, there we got a lot of people.
Yeah, I have about 2 more sentences. If you look at it anatomically, the real sphincter to development, if you will, is the wastewater treatment plant. And what we need to do is turn that plant off because it's being operated illegally, it's polluting the river, and we need to begin to pull back and take control by having on-site wastewater treatment systems that are more environmentally friendly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, your hand raised.
I would just like to say, I wonder if we haven't even touched the issues of all these ugly apartment buildings that they're putting in every vacant lot in Missoula, which is ruining the looks of Missoula, I think. And the ones they have put on Great Northern there, a block behind Albertson. I don't know what they're thinking of the traffic. All those are going to either have to go on Palmer or up Mount. All those people have to go somewhere, and where they're going to put them, I have no idea. They just put them up there, and nobody knows they're going to be there till they're there.
Did everyone hear her comment? Okay. It's about her, I'm sorry, your name is?
Maxine Eliason.
Maxine's concern is about what she characterizes as the ugly apartment buildings that are cropping up all over town. Here are some numbers for you to take home. In 2001, building permits were issued for about 512 dwelling units in Missoula.
I think all of them are on that street.
In 2002, building permits were issued for 1,100 dwelling units in Missoula, more than twice. And as anybody who pays attention to the financial world would recognize, a lot of that is driven by low interest rates. But we believe that some of it's being driven by a regulatory environment. But out of those 1,100 that were permitted in 2002, well over 600 are multifamily dwellings, the apartment buildings.
Terrible.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
My name's Karen Meyer, and I live in the Carter Range area. I have two concerns. One is, how come no one's looking into having them fix the city sewer that is broken now, the clay pipes that are old in the university area that need to be fixed, before they add more onto it? They're adding more onto something that's already broken. Why don't they fix what's broken first? And second is, I want to know what this group is going to do about, and if I join this group, what are we going to do about the apartments that are going up in between residential units?
One thing that I can say about the apartment buildings is that the City Council is currently working very hard on a new chapter which will establish some design standards for multifamily dwellings. But yeah, it is a little bit the horses out of the barn, yeah, on some of those cases. But I do give them a lot of credit for this serious effort that they put into that. I'm gonna ask a gal over here that we asked to speak about her neighborhood for just a minute, and then we'll come back to this side of the room.
What about the sewer, Jane? Did you ask about that second part of that question?
Yeah. Right now, we've identified our priorities, and our priorities for Save Our Neighborhoods are these documents. We want the law fixed first, and we are not unconcerned about sewer issues, but we're a group of volunteers, and there's just so much area that we can cover. We are also aware of some very diligent efforts being made by different groups, both in the legal context and in an organizational context. That's the best answer I can give you at this point in time.
Thanks, Jane. Can you hear me? No? Yes. Okay. I'm wearing black and blue tonight because that's how some of us in some of the neighborhoods feel lately. I don't know if any of the rest of you feel the same way and manage to approximate the same. We've been watching a new game in our neighborhoods, in my neighborhood, and
which is what?
It might be called Beach Box Bingo. A beach box, if you've been in a tight, crowded coastal area where land is at a premium, is a building that extends to its lot lines and is as high as ordinance allows. Beach Box Bingo is the new game in Missoula. We close our eyes for a while, then open them, then look to see where the next beach box has landed. Whose neighborhood is it in this time? I'm glad to see this great turnout here tonight because I think we're all concerned about the rapid population growth and commensurate building going on. We are faced with the challenge of how to accommodate more people in the valley and still have a quality of life that we've come to love in this place. It's not an easy question, it's not an easy challenge to meet, and it requires involvement and hard questions and stamina, I think. I think one thing that would be useful in neighborhoods, and we're working on it in mind, is to identify what characteristics of the neighborhood are that contribute and are valuable to the neighborhoods. And one of the things, a little list of those, is the footprint of the buildings historically on the lots in those neighborhoods. If you value your neighborhood and the way it looks, what what is the historic footprint of the, or the ratio of built to non-built and permeable, still permeable lot area. Talk about height of buildings, talk about setbacks, talk about, you can talk about more things if you want to, roof pitches, types of windows. We've got several egregious examples in my neighborhood that have motivated and mobilized people recently. I haven't talked to anybody about a couple of them who've been in favor of them, except the builder of one of them. They're 3 stories tall, including parking built in underneath. This is in R2, where 3 stories aren't permitted. There were no variances necessary. They passed. They just appeared. So I think a hopeful vision I have is that we can identify the characteristics of neighborhoods and develop a language so that we can talk about and promote what seems to be good and essential to neighborhoods. Infill is a way to add density to older Missoula and avoid sprawl into the outlying undeveloped neighborhoods. Perhaps sounded good on paper when everybody thought it was going to be in somebody else's neighborhood. What it's turned out to be is a false dichotomy, because we haven't avoided sprawl and we have definitely got infill. We're losing at both ends. I'm trying to speed up my comments because we're running a little bit late, and if you'll bear with me just a minute. One of the things that concerns me a lot is the quality of the building going on, whether it's dense or otherwise. What we see, if you want to say cheap and dirty construction materials and seemingly no design, I call that trash-architecture. It insults everyone. It insults the locals, the neighbors who suddenly are jolted out of the peaceful complacence of their lives by the imposition of big and ugly into their viewscapes and their skyscapes. And cheap, dumbed-down habitation insults the people, low income or otherwise, who would live there. If we can posit that creativity and even cognitive development are enhanced and stimulated by aesthetic surroundings, then just what are we actually saying to the potential renters and buyers and their children of these lockboxes we're offering them? Are they not worthy of quality, well-designed housing? Real equality for all should be quality for all. And I think that it's one of the comments I hear quite often is that if things just didn't look quite so ugly, some of the density wouldn't be as offensive. Anyway, I want to thank you for the opportunity to get up here, and I'd like to urge a slowing down of all the approvals of projects, especially in established neighborhoods, and I hope that you all can help mobilize to get some improvements going on. Thank you. Think citywide and act in your neighborhood.
Let's hear from a council person. Go ahead, Ann.
I am a council person.
And I didn't introduce you. This is Ann Kesmer-Sick. Oh.
I know. Just on your way. I just want to let people know to take these numbers with a grain of salt, because to my eyes they are exceedingly low. There is already in this far corner over here, Perry Ashby's development is going to have 500 houses there on his own in an area that is either on the edge of this or where it says 495. It's going to be by the end of next year. So these numbers are only going to get much, much larger, exacerbating perhaps sewer issues.
Okay.
Also, I would like to say, if you feel strongly about these issues, strongly in your heart and in your being, run for council. There are 3 seats that are going to be vacant. Ward 1 is the Rattlesnake. It's downtown. Ward 2, my ward, is North Side, West Side, Grant Creek, River Road. And Ward 3, the Slant Street area, although there's a fine candidate who's slated for that one. But there are 3 seats vacant. There's ample opportunity. There's 3 seats up for grabs besides that. And if you feel strongly, run. If you can't run, ask your neighbors, ask your sons, your daughters, your friends, because it's their future. It's our future. And I know that I want to be able to live in Missoula and leave a Missoula to my children and my grandchildren that's worth living in.
Thank you, Ann. One thing I'd like to point out that I heard a few years ago that really impressed me, and that was a councilman who calculated his approximately $9,000 a year income compared to the hours and hours that he spent as a councilman, and he estimated that his pay was about $3 an hour. So these people who serve us in City Hall deserve an awful lot of praise.
Well, the healthcare plan, after that, and you get good health.
Okay, all right, and they do get parking and 2 blocks of City Hall. I'd like to call on somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Sir?
Yeah, my name's Ed Taylor. If you look at the density bonus subdivision map that we were giving out, well, by the way, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation.
You're welcome.
Doing a terrific job. If you look at square number 2 on River Road, I lived there for 21 years. I don't want to sound redundant here, but my wife disagrees with me. I feel that we were forced out of the neighborhood. It changed the whole flavor of the neighborhood after we got annexed, and we went downhill from there. I testified in front of the city council. I testified in front of the county people. I testified in front of the park department. I've been it all. There's 2 things I'd like to point out to everybody here, and there's probably some people here who are pro-development. I wouldn't doubt, but I don't know who you are. Don't slink. One thing, I think I'm a little disappointed on how small this turnout is. Everybody in Missoula seems to feel like it won't happen in my backyard. I think what we need to do is talk to each and every one of our neighbors, because we're all involved in this. And if you don't think it's going to happen to you, take it from me, it's going to happen everywhere in this town. To the city council, once again, I strongly urge that we take a step back from this and look at things at the bigger picture. I really hope that we don't have one homogeneous densification zone from one end of the valley to the other. I think part of the reason why we live in this town is because of the wonderful varying neighborhoods that we have. We're losing our agricultural land here by leaps and bounds. There's another part that nobody's mentioned is light pollution. Pretty soon we won't see any of the night skies anymore. Noise pollution is another one. Keep up the good work. Are you guys planning on participating in just the city area, or are you going to look towards the county?
We're
also?
focused on the city right now. Again, we're trying to be focused. And we feel we'll get better results if we really target our attention to specific issues, which is why that was my response
Well,
to
it's
some
marching
very,
on.
very important other issues.
It's marching on. You guys are doing a great job. Would have liked to have been able to stay where I was, but...
And where do you live now?
We're in the target range, but it's encroaching real quickly.
Okay. Rural by design.
Yeah.
Okay, who else? Yes. Yes.
You know, I hear Cadus and others that are running the show around here saying that growth is inevitable. And I asked you, where is it written that we have to provide a rental or a house for everyone who drives down the pike to this city?
Actually, I have a question, but as you know, several of us really put out a lot of energy for the occupancy standard thing, which accomplished 2 things. One, it showed us that this is not a neighborhood issue, this is a city issue. Because we were, university area, it was like, well, we don't have to deal with it, and it got pushed over to Brooks, and then Brooks, we push it on out somewhere else. So it's all of us, and I'm glad to see so many of us are here that are diverse. And the other thing that was accomplished is a lot of us got worn out, just so dissipated in energy, and so perhaps that might have been part of the purpose of the group, I'm not sure, to wear out the opposition. So my question to you is, tell us what we need to do so that we're not standing over the back fence complaining about this to our neighbor who agrees with us, so that our energy doesn't get dissipated that way, so we get to put it where it can do some good rather than just getting, you know, sitting around drinking coffee complaining about this to each other just wears us out.
How do I answer that question?
You make your own laws. Here, I'll help you without that.
Yeah, we did have a list of the kinds of things that we recommend that individuals do. Yes, Mr. Childers, why don't you answer that question?
Well, you can hear me well.
Stand up, we can't.
Stand up.
We're old, we're losing our hearing.
I and some other people on the city council are pursuing these issues. One thing I want to hear, and I'd like to hear it from every one of you through my email, which is ci.missoula.mp.us, is that you want the area requirement in your zoning to be effective. Yes. This is whether you have non-conforming lots or not. I need to hear it from you because I'm told that if you have 2 lots, that second lot is worth $40,000 to you or more. You can send me 2 emails. But this is serious business to me. I am in favor of having the zoning to be effective. I think that the people that placed the zoning wanted it, but I need to know that from you because you're giving away a little money if you do this. Jim Nugent, the city attorney, has written a lot of missives about non-conforming lots, and they all say potentially there are problems, possibly this thing can happen, maybe something else can happen. And I understand and you understand that these are maybes, these are not things that are guaranteed to happen. And they might happen, it's possible that they'll happen. You'll find that out inside of the courtroom, I think. But that's number one. I'd like y'all to make sure you know what your zoning is. Everybody here know what their property is zoned and what their block is zoned. You need to know what day or tomorrow. I know what you're going to do. Very good. Know what your zoning is so that you know what's likely to happen. If they're putting apartment buildings between single-family houses, it's probably because it's zoned for that.
I think one of the things that you can do, other than coming to meetings like this and becoming informed, is to help the organization by making a contribution to it, because this doesn't happen for free. Stay in contact with organizations like this because they're going to make an effort to keep you informed. And then thirdly, I think you need to inform your neighbors, because, you know, as James already said tonight, knowledge is pretty powerful if it's the right knowledge. Everything that's being put out here is based on fact, out of research. It's not based on supposition or what we would like to have happen. It's based on what is happening. And what is happening is something right now that is becoming a reality with City Council. I think a lot of what happened when they adopted these regulations in 1999 was well intended. But we've got enough examples on the ground right now to where we know it didn't quite work out the way we planned. So stay with us because we are working on it. Let us know, let us hear from you because, which by the way, my email address is wrong. Take the junior off of there if you got it right. I was very proud of my father, and that's why I wanted it that way in the beginning. And you know, City Hall, you can tell them, and they 3 times they'll get it right. So thanks.
Just one more comment. I wanted to introduce Councilwoman Luann Crowley, who is also here tonight. I'm going to give you 1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute.
I generally don't talk that much. I don't need a mic. Anyway, I learned a lesson here just today, or actually a couple days ago. We got a pond in our neighborhood, duck pond, back in Bilo. And the Gophers spoke. And the Gophers hired an attorney. And they got their way with that pond. I got $20 here for Save Our Neighborhoods to hire an attorney a pledge, and I want everybody else digging their pockets, to hire an attorney to stop what's in progress right now until there's further discussions on it and it's worked out. This is the only way that we're going to stop what's happening right this moment until further discussions are in there. All right.
Well, I see my husband digging in his pocket. I already made him dig some out earlier when the baskets came around. My name is Julie McDonald, and my husband and I represent the Lewis and Clark neighborhood. And one of the things that really bothered me at our neighborhood council meeting when the mayor spoke, and God help me, I had daggers coming out of my eyes, but I heard him talk about money. That is basically all I heard come out of his mouth was money. And I really, really feel that a big problem in the city of Missoula is a lot of the money that is being generated here doesn't stay here. And these rentals, these big rentals that they're going to build, I feel personally are going to worsen the problem. I was informed that a lot of our real estate is advertised out of the state. I was horrified. I didn't know that. So I'm learning too. I'm becoming aware. It felt out of my control. It really did. And it made me feel better to be able to speak my mind. But one thing I want the city council members to take into consideration is, what is the American dream? Is the American dream a picture of a big high-rise with 50,000 people living around it? And it's not. The American dream is a house with a yard and kids and a pet and a tree and all that stuff. These planned neighborhood clusters, to me, do not represent the American dream. My husband and I saved a house from being bought up by an absentee landlord. You know, we saw it go up, and we said, hey, we're just going to offer what they're asking. And we did, and we got the house. But we've got renters living behind us. And we've got renters living a few doors down, and I'm getting tired of picking up their beer cans in my yard. We all know who we're talking about. We're talking about the college kids. I hate to rank on the college kids. Everybody needs an education, but they need to learn respect for our neighborhoods. I don't have a whole lot else to say except to think about what overcrowding does. Like the rats, they bite each other, they kill, they hurt. I see a lot of murder being said on the news lately. That scares me. A young boy was shot in a neighborhood. That man was angry, like a rat in an overcrowded cage. Granted, the boy shouldn't have been messing with his car, but the man was angry and he shot him in the back. And these are the kinds of things we're going to be looking at. And I'm very concerned, and I intend to get with these people and become a loud voice. I'm a lot younger than most of you, and I intend to scream loud for a lot of you that don't.
Having lived in high-rises for much of my life, it's not a bad way to live, and I think that option should be available to people who want it. Yes, sir. There are going to be 2 more comments tonight. You're it.
Nothing has been said here tonight about seeking somebody to run against Saddam Kates. We need a new mayor, and we need 4 new county commissioners. We've got 3 elected and 1 unelected, and those of us in the county, believe me, are not being represented, ladies and gentlemen. We are not. And what the gentleman said over here is absolutely essential. We need to do something now to stop what is going on, because this piecemeal business is not going to work. And the city council is going to go with what the mayor says, and he mentioned in his State of the City message that we have to begin to accept living in high-density areas. he has to change his mind, but he won't. So the best thing we can do as a group of people is to get him the heck out of there.
Okay, one man's opinion. I'm sorry, yeah. I'm going to call on
John.
John. Yes.
I'm John Marino, and I live out in Miller Creek. And the one thing that nobody mentioned here tonight, and it could be like the sixth piece of the puzzle, it usually sneaks in the back door. It's a big monster that carries a big club, and it's called SIDs. In my neighborhood, we paid for the new roads from the Y intersection all the way up through Linda Vista Boulevard to the new subdivision. The roads were fine until the new construction started. Then they came back and said, oh, well, look how bad your roads are. Well, after 5 or 6, 8 years of heavy equipment, concrete trucks, supply trucks, sure, those roads were built to handle that type of thing. So who paid for it? The people that lived in the existing neighborhood. The new people had nothing. So I just want you to be aware that after all this development takes place, they're going to come back and say, well, services have to be upgraded and you're going to pay for it. I've never lived anywhere, and I've lived a lot of places where they had this monster called SID. I mean, I always wondered what our taxes pay for. Now, everybody uses the acronym NIMBY, not in my backyard, but I want you to think of another acronym. It's called NIM2, not in my term of office.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yes. Mrs. Herbig, please. This is Lois Herbig, who has decided that after a long life of public service, this will be her last term. Now, after 16 years. Anyway, I hope I don't get too many boos, but I see several council people here tonight, and I think every one of us are interested in hearing what you have to say, and that we're not happy with what's going on. I think I can speak for most of them are here, and I can see, I bet there are at least 6, 7, 8 of us. So I hope that you don't feel too harshly toward us. We are trying, and we'll keep trying, especially if you'll keep in touch. I have more people apologizing when they call me on the phone, and I don't know why, because that's what I'm there for. My office is my home, and if I don't hear from them, I don't know what they think. So I can't get out and travel the whole ward just to see what's going on. So they keep me posted, and I hope that you will keep in touch with your representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Well, Bob Lucino, I just want to thank SON for the meeting you put on tonight, for the agenda. Very well done. And gentleman back there, whose name I can't remember, said, what can we do right now? And kind of a question calls, what can we do on the practical side? And I just want to say, having watched our city attorney work with him a little bit, I know that part of his concern when it comes to especially land use questions is a great caution that I think has at times served the city well, caution against litigation. He certainly tries to watch out for the city's best interest and doesn't want to see litigation. And I want to suggest that this fund continue the money pour in for possible litigation. I don't want to see anybody get sued, but I believe Jim Nugent would respond to that. And I know that the city council relies on Jim's opinions, and I'm simply saying that if there's a land use question that SON wants to grapple with and you feel that we have a reasonably strong case, I think that's a card that needs to be played. And the other two cards are those who aren't SON members, please join tonight if anything has grabbed you. And thirdly, we do have some vacant council seats coming up, and this is a real good way to be involved as well.
Thank you. You can't believe how much it helps to be able to stand up and say, I'm the president of SON and I represent 130 people. And if I could say a much higher number, that would be even better. Yes?
I got to read the money.
Okay.
I've got a pretty good voice.
Not as good as mine.
I wanted you to know one thing. We used to have what they called the Missoula County Freeholders. Every association, Rattlesnake, everyone used to belong to it. And we used to get things accomplished. But we didn't have 12 council members. And that's why we can't get anything done. We started East-West Reserve Street homeowners. We have been in the Supreme Court. We lost. But it took us 3 or 4 years. And we had over 1,600 people. And we still never made it. So bear in mind, you got to know what you're doing. Just get some good lawyers and start marching on Helena.
First of all, I'd like to thank you also for what you've done, and we sure appreciate it. As a group, and to go along with what she was saying, how can you deal with a city council and a mayor that would allow, like in our area, 500 to 600 new units go in, and then come along after the fact and start dealing with infrastructure? How do you deal with that situation? Us as a group is the only thing that can happen.
Yeah, you're obviously from the River Road area. Are you from the River Road area? Yeah. I think that, unfortunately, the best answer I can give to that is, wow, have a lot of lessons been learned. You know, and that's small comfort to you all. Well, we're passing 9 o'clock. Okay, one more. This is the last comment. Please go. Right.
One thing I've got to say is, having been around a lot of years and a native here and fighting the county and the city, they draw this process out forever and ever and ever. Whenever you're protesting anything, they never seem to listen. You get a majority of people protesting, and they draw it out as long as they can, and pretty quick, the people protesting just throw up their arms and say, I quit. Everybody here has got to pull their pants up tight and fight. That's the only way we're going to change the way it's run.
I'm thinking in terms of the next legislative session, okay? I'm thinking in terms of 2 years out. I think there are some things that we're going to have to take. I agree with you. There are some things we're going to have to take to Helena. But it's that kind of long-term view and stick-to-itiveness that is the only way that we're going to be able to succeed. Go ahead.
You're not famous as BS on you.
Another person.
I would decide that work with these folks.
Oh, here, let me give you.
I work with these folks all the time. It seems like they can be capricious. It seems like it can be arbitrary. They do enforce the rules. I've heard some things here tonight. Comments about architecture. It's as good as the guy that's paying for it. Okay? So the bottom line is, yeah, we do have a problem here, and we need to focus really. The infrastructure is a problem, but it's the density that they're looking to propose. And what you want to remember, those of you that were not at the Lewis and Clark homeowners or neighborhood council meeting, is Mayor Cadis made a very simple statement. A lady came up and said, I would like to keep my garden in my neighborhood. He just didn't get it. The real truth is he says, I love to garden too. I want you to have your garden. But when you have 30-foot buildings surrounding your entire garden, there's no sunlight to grow it anymore. And that takes away from the neighborhood arguments. So with that said, that's where we're fighting. Dig deep.
The treasurer reports $300. Thank you so very, very much. And I think Jane VanFossen has probably put in thousands of hours, not hundreds. And it was her getting everybody together in the beginning that brought us all here tonight. And that probably give us hope. So thank you, Jane.